Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever in the world you are right now. My name is Hisham Mundol. I'm with the Environmental Defense Fund, and I welcome you to what promises to be a fascinating conversation with a remarkable leader, Mr. Meenesh Shah, who is the chairman of the National Dairy Development Board of India. Sir, welcome. I want to start off by saying what an incredible privilege it is for me personally to get a chance to speak to you. I'm going to talk about EDF for just exactly 1 minute, and then for the rest of the time, it's NDDB. Environmental Defense Fund is a not-for-profit organization. Our objectives are to support an Indian pathway to shared sustainable prosperity. Prosperity because the aspirations of India and our people are huge, and they deserve to be huge, and they deserve to be realized. Shared because the basics of life and the quality of life should be accessible to all, rich, poor, urban, rural, male, female, etc. And sustainable because it should be environmentally responsible, but it also has to make economic sense. And I think it's within that's going to be a lot of the framing of the conversation today. For those of you in the audience who may not know Mr. Shah, he's currently the chairman of the National Dairy Development Board. He used to be executive director, and he has 35 years of experience in this space. So he is a master of the sector. But I will also add that I think he's one of the most thoughtful voices on the broader cooperative sector in India. So welcome. The format for the audience is, as and when there are questions, please put them in the Q&A box, and we'll try and cover off as much as we can. We have a number of questions to get the conversation going, and then we'll take audience questions. Sir, I wanted to start off with just the dairy sector. I don't think everybody, most people don't know how big or how important it is in India. And can you just give a sense of scale of what the sector is and what it means for the country?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mandol. It's a privilege for me also to join, such a webinar with so many important participants, knowing about NDDB and the work, what we do. Well, the dairy sector in India, actually, I'll just say a few sentences. India is the largest milk producer in the world. Our milk production last year was 210 million metric tons, which is more than double than the United States, which is the next best, country in terms of milk production. So the another important point is all this milk which is produced in India is by the smallholder dairy farming systems, which means that, our average farm size is hardly 3 animal, 4 animal, as against the very large size dairy farms, you see in the developed countries. For example, in New Zealand, it is 425 average animal farm size, or more than 200, 300 animal farm size in US, Canada, wherever you go. So this is the unique character of Indian dairy industry. It's a small farmer dairy holding systems, and though it is the largest milk producer in the world, more than 80 million farmer families, are involved in animal husbandry practices in dairying, and they derive revenue or livelihood out of this activity. So dairying for us is not only the nutrition which it provides to a large lacto-vegetarian population we have in the country, but is also a source of livelihood for a sizable number of farmer families in the rural India. When I say we are the largest milk producer, our share in the global milk marketing production is 23% now. So in a way, we are producing, 1 liter of milk out of 4 liter produced in the world. And if the rate at which we are growing at 6% CAGR from 2014 onwards. And I have no reason why we will not be able to maintain this growth rate against a global growth rate of 2%, which means that by 2030, we will be touching around 33-34% of the world's milk production. So 1 liter out of 3 liter produced in world will be produced in India. In terms of per capita milk availability, I think when NDDB initiated its journey of dairy development in the country, our per capita availability was hardly 120 ml milk per day per person. We started the structured dairy development programs in the country in 1970, and 1998 we became largest milk producer in the world. And today per capita availability of milk is 427 ml of milk per person per day, which is more than the world average of 300 ml per person per day. Another thing which I think I would like to just stress upon is the healthy growth rate at which we are growing. The consumers are actually now, there is a lot of shift happening in the consumer preferences. Generally, you will see that with the improved economy, the consumers of, with more purchasing power, they will buy more protein and some of the carbohydrates in their food, which get replaced by protein. And many of us, because we are vegetarian again, this protein part actually, which replaces carbohydrate, is in the form of milk and milk products. So we have a very, very great future for the country, in terms of milk and milk production.
Thank you so much, sir. Some of those numbers are difficult to imagine just in terms of the scale. So appreciate your sharing that. You spoke about the future, an important actor in the past and the future. Arguably, the most important actor in this space has been NDDB. And I encourage people to read the story of NDDB because there is so much of the story of India in it. Would just, from your unique perspective, can you introduce NDDB? And I'd love it if you were able to bring in the elements of Sardar Patel and Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri, because they both had roles to play as well in the genesis of your organization.
Sure. I think it all started, the movement, actually, the cooperative movement in the dairy industry, all started along with the, independence movement, what we had seen in our country. So just 2 years before we became independent in 1948, in 1946, a small dairy cooperative was formed in Anand. Anand was a very small town then. The reason behind forming a dairy cooperative was, as you had mentioned in your this question, is the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. There were farmers here who were supplying milk through a private company for the Bombay market. It was a Bombay state. Gujarat and Maharashtra were the part of the Bombay state, and because it was totally dependent on the demand. So if there is no demand, the milk produced by farmers was not purchased in many times, and the farmers were not getting the income. So Sardar Patel actually advised all the farmers that the best way to deal with this problem is to have your own cooperative. Don't depend on the private vendor and the market in Bombay. Why can't you form your own cooperative and sell yourself? I think that was the main reason why a cooperative was formed in 1946, which today it is known as Amul, Anand Milk Union Limited, actually. They started collecting milk from hardly 50-60 liters of milk per day, and started immediately. Actually, farmers accepted this model, and by 1964, apart from setting up of their own dairy processing plant for milk and milk products, they also set up the first animal feed plant in the country, in Anand, because the nutrition of the animal was important if farmers has to benefit from this activity. The inauguration of this animal feed plant was planned by the then Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri ji. So he came for inauguration, and suddenly he decided, he told the general manager of Amul, who was Dr. Kurian, that I just want to spend a night with the farmers in a village. And it was a big challenge, Prime Minister telling himself there are security concerns, but then somehow it was settled. Dr. Kurian told that we will not tell many people that he was spending a night in the village, and the village, the visit was planned. He spent a night, discussed whole night, in fact, with the farmers. And then the one thing which he concluded and realized was that farmers of Anand district, or in and around Anand, at that time it was a Kera district, were socially and economically much more better at a higher scale as compared to the other areas where he has visited his own state, for example, Uttar Pradesh, and he has seen the farmers. And he somehow got a point that one of the, I think, reason for this is the dairy movement or dairy cooperative which has taken place. And then he told Dr. Kurian that I want to replicate the Amul pattern of cooperatives, what is doing wonders in Anand, in the entire country. So give me a proposal in 2 weeks' time, how it can be done, what you want, and we will see that it it materializes. And that's how I think a proposal was submitted, that a body like National Dairy Development Board can be set up, whose main objective will be to replicate Anand pattern cooperatives across the country. And that's how in 1965 NDDB was born, and it started as a cooperative actually earlier because time was a constraint. It started the, I think, first Operation Flood program, which was a strategy or a planned initiative for forming the cooperatives across the country. There was also a challenge of funds. So at that point of time, India was getting a lot of food products, in the form of milk powder and butter from European countries as aid. And instead of giving this, milk commodity products free of cost to the milk processor who were in metros in Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, NDDB decided that it is better to monetize these commodities. And the money generated by monetizing these commodities can easily be used to create the infrastructure in the form of cooperatives. And that's how even the funding aspect of what Prime Minister wanted to replicate was taken care. And I think Operation Flood became perhaps the largest food for aid program in the world. From 1970, it continued till 1996 for 26 years in 3 phases. In the subsequent phase, we got the World Bank funding instead of the donated commodities. And then by the end of Operation Flood in 1996, we had created 170 Amul in the country. That means 170 milk unions on the lines of Amul were created in the country. So you see Verka in Punjab today, or Nandini in Karnataka, or Avin in Tamil Nadu. They are all actually created and operationalized during the Operation Flood program. And in 1998, just after 2 years of, we concluded the Operation Flood, India became the largest milk producer in the world. From 20 million metric tons, which was a milk production we had from 1950 to 1970. And actually the per capita was coming down because our population growth rate was much higher than the milk production growth rate. From there, I think achieving this speed was, driven by the National Dairy Development Board. And from 1998 onwards, we have still been the largest milk producer in the world. Now dairying contributes almost 5%, to the national economy. If you see in terms of the gross value of the output of milk, it's today, I think, larger than all the grains and pulses together. So as an agriculture commodity, if you consider milk, I think it's much larger than the combined output of all pulses and grains. So it's one of the largest agriculture commodity, providing so much, contributing so much to the national economy. was, I think, the main focus of NDDB, and that's how we got evolved. And even today, after making India not only self-sufficient, largest milk producer in the world also, we have been working on other aspects like improving the productivity of animal, or improving the quality of milk and milk products, or maybe establishing a traceability, end-to-end traceability. Because when you say smallholder farming system, the challenge is to have end-to-end traceability from the milk produced to the consumer getting the processed milk or milk products. So we are now working on all these aspects, and we continue to provide whatever technical support and whatever support required to government in forming the right policies as a national institute of national importance. So 1965, we became as a cooperative society, it was formed. And in 1987, in fact, the parliament passed an act, NDDB became the act of parliament and declared as an institute of national importance.
Oh, that's fascinating. And again, you say numbers with a modest tone, but those numbers are giant. But I want to point out one very interesting aspect of NDDB, and would love to hear more about why that is the case. For all its scale, NDDB's ambition or mission is not to become the biggest milk producer in the world. What you have is serve small marginal farmers and double income. Can you talk about why that is your North Star rather than being the biggest in the world, which you already are? But it's interesting that you have that area of focus.
Yeah, I think very rightly said. In fact, at NDDB, everyone knows that we are not into business of dairy. Actually, that is not something for which we have formed or we are evolved. Our main focus is the social and economic upliftment of the rural farmers, rural viewers who are associated with dairying, animal husbandry, and the allied sectors. And that has been the, I think, driving force for all our employees who have been, working relentlessly. Dairying is, I think, just a means to achieve the objective what we have. And if you see, we somewhere in the journey of making India self-sufficient in milk, we also worked on edible oil. I think you might have heard the brand name Dhara. Dhara was an instant success. We formed dairy oil cooperatives, edible oil cooperatives on the line of dairy. Almost same value chain was used, and Dhara is, I think, one of the largest edible oil brand today, which is owned by our subsidiary Mother Dairy Fruits and Vegetable Limited. We are also into honey because, again, it's the same value chain, and farmer do produce honey, which also has an impact on improving the agriculture crop yield, because there is a pollination, and when you grow honey, you have honeybees. I think the crop productivity also improve. So we are also into honey, and very recently, I think, where EBF and we have also discussed a lot is on the manure part. So far we have been discussing and working on milk as a revenue generator for the farmers, and somehow we have ignored maybe the dung, which we realized, I think, 4 or 5 years back, because dung is both a fuel and fertilizer. And we started working on it. We initiated with one pilot in a village, and we saturated all the houses with the animal holding with a small 2 cubic meter household in the backyard household biogas plant. So actually the 15 or 20 kg dung mixed with the water was used as a feed. It's very easy, simple, and biogas produced was sufficient for a family of 5 to 6 people for entire requirement, from maybe hot water in the morning, breakfast, and both the meals. And so there was immediate saving in terms of the maybe whatever cooking fuel they were using, either it was a cooking gas or the wood or whatever cooking material they were using. So farmer found it very, very convenient in using it. Our interest was to actually reduce the impact of methane gas, because as India is producing the largest amount of milk, we do have largest number of animals in the world also. And these animals, they emit methane, and there is a problem of greenhouse gas emission. So with this, we got rid of this methane emission which was happening and which was used productively for the cooking purpose. And then the bioslurry, after the methane was produced, was converted into solid and liquid organic manures. And we had actually formed a all-woman cooperative in that village. That cooperative is only now, producing the manures and using it for their own agriculture purpose. And scale has now increased, from a small 400, 500 biogas plants we set up in one village. Now NDDB has been able to replicate this model again in more than 10 states. More than 5,000 biogas plants are already installed across all the parts in the country. And the government of Gujarat wants us to replicate in every district of Gujarat. So a similar model will be developed. We are working with all other state governments. In fact, the government of India has decided that under the Govardhan scheme of Ministry of Rural Development and Department of Water and Sanitation, they will allow this model to be replicated. So, there is a huge scope. It's a win-win-win in whatever way you say. So there is an environmental advantage, saving for the farmer. The slurry is sold to by the farmers to the cooperative for manure. They get money out of it. So in effect, actually, every farmer family is getting maybe a much higher amount from the dung as compared to the money they were getting from milk. I think as you are rightly saying, the doubling of farmers' income, it has a great potential to double the farmers' income by adopting manure management model. Not only stopping there, actually, in the small household level biogas plant, we have also worked a community biogas plant and take one biogas plant and then laying a pipeline to 100 houses. That's also working very nicely. And now we are working on a dairy plant along with the large size biodigester, 4,000 cubic meter, where we will buy 100 metric tons of dung every day from the farmers, which will produce sufficient steam and electricity from the biogas to process 2 lakh liter of milk every day. So in effect, that circular economy, the processing of milk is also from the dung, and we are not consuming any energy for electricity or steam. And that is, if our calculations are right, I think we will be able to save 40 paise per liter toward the processing cost of milk. And then we are again, giving money in the form of buying dung and also providing manures to the farmers. So I think this one area where we see a lot of potential is the manure management, and we are, I think, working with the farmers to help them to not only actually improve the income, but also improve their life, improve the women farmers who are always involved in for cooking the meal. They will have to fire the wood, and there were a lot of smoke around, and so it has a health advantage as well. We are just discussing about the advantages, and we could find that it can actually address 6 United Nations SDGs. One model addressing so many SDGs is something which I think we were late in realizing, but I think we are happy that now that model is very well accepted by the farmers.
It's interesting that you make that point about 6 SDGs, because I want to point out one inaccuracy in what you said. You said win, win, win. I think we should have said it 6 times, because it's
exactly.
that significant. The remarkable thing about NDDB I have always found is it's one thing to pilot it out at a village, and you spoke about larger size biogas, but the ability to scale is unparalleled by NDDB, quite frankly, anywhere in the world. And I was going to ask this question later, but now that you've brought up the example, NDDB's recently set up with a separate organization. Can you tell us what the rationale is for setting that organization up as a separate entity, and what the ambitions are for that organization?
I think, as I told, and as you also told, we soon realized that if we have to replicate, for example, a village model where we have 360 houses where we have installed biogas plant, and if you see, I already told about 7-8 crores farmer families, involved in animal husbandry and dairying. Now, if we have to scale up and provide biogas plants to all these families, I think in my life I will not be able to do. And so is all our employees. So, then we had a discussions and we deliberated and thought that it is better that, a separate company is formed by NDDB. It's a subsidiary of NDDB, and which will completely focus on only the manure management and replicating what, we have achieved. So on one hand, we have the small biogas model system with the individual beneficiary. We also have a community biogas plant and the system where we can maybe cover more families. And then there is a a larger model where we have a dairy plant where you can use dung as a source of energy, and also a similar plant where we can compress the biogas and get the bio-CNG. Instead of using this at household purpose, which may take longer time, I think if we are able to compress this gas and actually use it for the mobility of the vehicle, that is also one of the important area. That's how now we are working with the Maruti Suzuki and the company which we have formed, and Maruti Suzuki will work together to find out a best model. We will work on 2-3 different pilot projects and work out a model where the gas produced bio-CNG is actually meeting the requirements of Maruti for running the vehicles, and the manure value chain remains the same after the bio-CNG is produced. So it's actually, if you see our model of scaling up, I think we start with a small innovation. We have an in-house team which is always looking at the possibilities and opportunities. They always scan the environment. Then we do some kind of research. A larger team is involved in seeing how, in terms of this innovation which we see, we can replicate it, or we can make it more reliable and acceptable by the farmers. And then so some research has gone into it, and also the business possibilities, whether it remains financially viable, sustainable for the farmers. And once we know all three are in place, I think then it is a replication which I think we have the teams working, or we take the help of dairy cooperatives across I think the country, which were formed under the Operation Flood. So they are our arm which helps us in replicating this, or taking the idea from the, you can say so, that from laboratory to field. I think we get a great help from the dairy cooperatives across the country.
Yeah, no, that's thank you for sharing that. I wanted to ask you how you are viewing the environment and climate change. And climate change is going to affect all of us, but arguably it is going to be rural agriculture and livestock communities that will be hit the first and oftentimes hit the hardest. I think one of the aspects of everything that you're talking is we need to address climate change, but we need to have a people first orientation to that. And it has to be incomes, livelihoods, nutrition led approaches that are most likely to be sustainable, rather than starting with a climate target, which is not grounded in reality. In that context, NDDB is a member of Pathways to Dairy Net Zero. And I wanted to ask you why you chose to be part of that effort. What is your vision on that initiative?
I think, as I told, I have been actually attending a lot of conferences around the world, and especially the World Dairy Summit, which happens every year. Whenever we tell that we are the largest milk producer in the world, the critics or the people who always comment on India is so what, you also hold the largest number of animals, and then the climate problems and the environmental issues and all. So we at NDDB, we thought that it is, I think, our endeavor to see that we also work towards achieving if not immediately the net zero, but at least we should have some target in mind, that by which we can also become the net zero industry. And we started working on it, I think, 2 years back, and more so because we had already started working on the manure, and manure being the largest contributor in the form of greenhouse gas emission. We thought that, I think, this is the right time to actually get such movement and start contributing towards it. So in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, that was the first actually initiative was manure management. We also started working on the genetic improvement of animals, because one of the important, I think, parameter for for becoming the net zero target, achieving the net zero target, is also how can we reduce the number of animals. So that's also one of the important, and we started working on the genetic improvement of animals so that we maintain the growth rate what we have in terms of milk production. We don't have any serious problems on the food security or the nutritional security, and at the same time we are reducing the number of animals towards achieving the carbon neutrality. Then we started working on the actually the balancing the ration for animals, because and I know that how important it is to balance our ration, because you need nutrients in right proportion and energy also in right proportion. So we started working on balancing the ration for animal, mainly after realizing that India is a diverse country, and some states are actually very rich in terms of dairy development. If you see Punjab, Haryana, or Gujarat, as against if you compare with maybe Jharkhand or Bihar in the eastern part of the country. So we observed that the states who are rich in Punjab, like Haryana, they generally overfed the animals. So the requirement of nutrition, if you see, energy, if you see, generally they feed more. And at the same time, if you go to states in eastern part like Jharkhand, Odisha, generally they are underfed, or sometimes they don't get anything actually feeding. They are just left, and they get whatever they are, it's possible for them. So we soon realized that it is important to educate farmers on balancing the ration. We did all the possible feed materials. We analyzed, we prepared a software, actually everything on the portal, all the ingredients, nutritional value, and everything was calculated. Computerized software was developed, and then we asked simply the farmers what are the feed material they are giving to the animal, and based on 4 or 5 ingredients what they are feeding to the animal, we just developed a list cost formulation using the feeding our nutritional value of the feed material, and we immediately started advising farmers that you reduce these 2 feed material and increase the proportion of other 2. And that way we could balance the ration. And then we carried out the methane emission. Actually we told universities, in fact, to work out the impact of this balancing ration on the methane emission. And we found that almost 15% reduction happened by balancing the ration in terms of the methane emission. So then we realized that this is also one of the, I think, important activity which NDDB should promote and advise farmers, make them aware that by balancing the ration, we are making a great contribution not only towards the health of the animal, but also on the health of the environment. And that's how this also became a part of our, important aspect to achieve the net zero targets. So it's a multi-pronged kind of strategy. You will have to take care of the genetic improvement of animal through right breeding strategies. You have to take care of the nutrition of the animal. Health is again, is important part. So all your vaccinations, all your actually the MR problems, so we are taking care. And then coupled with how do you better utilize manure and take care of the methane emission. So we're all working together and then reducing the plastic footprint, maybe reducing the water usage in our dairy plant. When I started my career in dairy processing plant, our ratio of water to milk, that means for processing 1 liter of milk, we were using 5 to 6 liters, of water. Now today we are working with maybe 0.5, liter of water or 0.4 liter of water for processing 1 liter of milk. So we are working, with every possible way. We have started calculating. I think before achieving the target, first you should know that what is the actually carbon footprint, what are the parameters which are responsible. So we are working with some of the agencies who are helping us to calculate the footprint what we have today, and then we will take one by one. And I think it won't be difficult for us to achieve the target which we have promised, to achieve net zero target.
Thank you so much for that, sir. As you know, in New York, there's Climate Week happening right now, and this session will be broadcast again for attendees of Climate Week separately. So I just wanted to repeat some of the things that you said, because all of the building blocks that you put in place are logical, but I want the audience who may are catching the rerun to remember that this is being done at the scale of 1/4 of the world's milk production. And
Yes.
This isn't, 1 farm, 2 farm, 3 farm. This is hundreds of thousands across the country. It's remarkable to see the degree of science that is applied. It is remarkable to also note the use of technology. When the Prime Minister inaugurated the Dairy Week recently, he spoke about a digital revolution, as much as a milk revolution. It's a digital and data sciences revolution on the back of this huge foundation of the cooperative network. So I realize we're close to the end of time that we have. We will share questions that we get, and we will attempt to reach out to all audience members. But just want to tell you, it's been a pleasure and a privilege, and you speak softly and with a huge amount of humility, but the numbers and the scale is truly remarkable. So thank you, sir, for all that you do. And on behalf of all of us, to NDDB as the cooperative of cooperatives, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mandal. It was very, very, very encouraging to speak to you and share some of our experiences and some of the activities which we are doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.